All these smeared shapes are creating one single sculpture, even if there's space between them. But you can also use the smear tool to remove from the sculpture, instead of adding to it. To do that, we need to set the tool to subtract. Scope into your sculpture if you haven't already, and make sure you have the smear shape tool active. You can equip it in the Sculpt Tools menu. In the Sculpt menu, find the Add or Subtract button. It's next to the Tools button, and the icon is a shape with a plus sign on it. Select this button with your primary imp to make the shape you're using subtractive. You'll notice that your imp turns into an outline. The shape on your imp becomes an outline too. You can now use the smear tool to cut into your sculpture. Try using different shapes to see what effect they have. For a really cool effect, try subtracting with a different coloured shape on your imp. How good is that? You can switch the tool between Add and Subtract using the button in the Sculpt menu. But if you're like me, you probably don't like wasting time in menus. So I've designed a gesture that will quickly switch between additive and subtractive tools. Here's how you do it. Touch the glowing sphere on top of your secondary controller to the bottom of the handle on your primary controller. Easy as that. Touch it again to switch back. Experiment with the tools for a bit and make something that looks interesting. When you're happy with its shape, go into play mode and see if you can get Connie across it. When Connie has crossed the first gap in play mode, switch back to edit mode and rewind time. Move your view over to the next gap using the move buttons, then start the next step once you're in position. Obviously, there are ways to do that. Architectural earlier in a shape, and you'll be able to organically resize and reshape it in a shape. Mentions imp. Don't spend too much time making it fancy. When you're ready, move on to the next step. If we want to make a super neat bridge, there are a couple of guides we can use. First, let's delete our practice sculpture. So if you're still in sculpt mode, go back to assembly mode. To leave a mode, hold the secondary triangle button, then press the primary circle button. Once you're in assembly mode, delete your sculpture by pressing the primary triangle button as you hover over it. Now go back into sculpt mode via the Modes menu to start a new sculpture. The guides we're going to use are called Mirror and Grid Snap. Open the Sculpt menu, then select the Guides button. Now select Mirror and then Grid Snap using your primary imp. They'll open to reveal some options. The plus and minus buttons next to the Grid Snap button set how fine or coarse the grid will be. The number indicates its current setting. You'll see a white dotted grid in the scene. The dots will be closer together when it's finer and further apart when it's coarser. Leave it set to 1 for now. You can experiment with it later. Now select the Stamp tool and choose a colour and a shape. The mirror guide will always centre on the first shape you make. That's why we started a new sculpture. Use the move buttons to position your view so you can see the whole of the second gap. Then set your imp reach to one of the platforms. Now stamp your first shape in the middle of the gap to activate the mirror guide. You'll see the mirror plane appear. This can't be moved once you start sculpting. You'll notice that it's much easier to keep your shape straight and in line. That's because Grid Snap is active. It even helps you rotate precisely. With Grid Snap on, objects rotate 45 degrees at a time. Sculpt your bridge from the mirror plane to the edge of the gap where it meets the platform. Your edits are mirrored, so you only have to make half a bridge, and it will be nice and symmetrical. Carry on sculpting your bridge using additive and subtractive edits and different colours. This time, you can make it as fancy as you like. If you want to switch off the mirror guide at any point, I've got another gesture you can use. Take both your motion controllers and lightly touch the bottom of their handles together to toggle the mirror guide off or on again. When you finish sculpting your bridge, test it out in play mode. When Connie is across the second gap, return to edit mode via the options menu. Switch off mirror and grid snap in the guides menu. To sculpt the last bridge, we'll be using before the smooth button on sculpt only equipped sculpt controller. Finish sculpting. In this tutorial, we'll master paint mode. Uh-oh. Looks like Connie's having a bad day. Cuthbert got a bit handy with the lawnmower and mucked up her garden. Sorry, Connie. Let's paint her a lovely new one in paint mode. So, to explain, everything you see in dreams is made up of little splats called flecks. They can be big, loose and painterly, or small, tight and smooth. Like real-life painting. Strokes are lines of flecks that you draw in 3D space using your imp. Let's make some now. Go to the Assembly menu. If it's closed, just press the square button to open it. Then open the Modes menu with X. It's this little group of icons. In the Modes menu, select Paint Mode. It has an icon with a paint squiggle. When you enter Paint Mode, you'll go straight into the Flex menu, and the Brush Flex tool will be equipped to your menu. Then open the Modes menu with X. It's this little group of icons. In the Modes menu, select Paint Mode. It has an icon with a paint squiggle. When you enter Paint Mode, you'll go straight into the Flex menu, and the Brush Flex tool will be equipped to your imp. See? There's a fleck on the tip of your imp. When you're painting, everything else goes blurry and black and white to help you focus on what you're creating. You can adjust the visual feedback in your preferences, which you can find in the Options menu. Try pressing and holding R2 while you move your imp around. And look at that! You're painting. Your imp creates a paint stroke made of a trail of flecks. Try changing how hard you press R2 as you paint. With the Brush Fleck tool, changing the pressure on R2 affects how opaque the flecks are. So if you press R2 lightly, the flecks will be more transparent. Now press square to open the Paint menu so that we can look at some new colours and finishes. Look at the top row of buttons in the Paint menu to find them. As well as the Flex menu, which is already open, there are also menus for colours and finishes there. You can You can adjust the visual feedback in your preferences, which you can find in the Options menu. Try pressing and holding R2 while you move your imp around. And look at that! You're painting. Your imp creates a paint stroke made of a trail of flecks. Try changing how hard you press R2 as you paint. With the Brush Fleck tool, changing the pressure on R2 affects how opaque the flecks are. So if you press R2 lightly, the flecks will be more transparent. Now press square to open the Paint menu so that we can look at some new colours and finishes. Look at the top row of buttons in the Paint menu to find them. As well as the Flex menu, which is already open, there are also menus for colours and finishes there. You can use these to change the colour and finish of your flecks. Practice with the Brush Flex tool and make as many strokes as you like. You can always undo any mistakes with the left directional button. Once you've got a feel for painting, continue to the next step. that you've made a gorgeous painting, hold L1 and press circle to scope out of paint mode. It's just like scoping out of a group and works the same way for all creation modes. A painting is a single object created in paint mode, just like a sculpture is a single object created in sculpt mode. In assembly mode, you can move, scale, and rotate your painting. To edit the strokes in the painting, you can scope into it, just like you can with the group. Try scoping into the painting you just made. Hover over it, hold L1, then press X to scope in. When you scope into a painting, you will automatically be put back into paint mode and equipped with the brush fleck tool. Press circle to unequip the brush fleck tool. Now you can use the Move tool on the individual strokes in the painting. You can scope out of the painting again with L1 and circle. Do you fancy making some flowers for Connie's garden? Connie loves flowers. Let's start by making a leaf, and then we can work our way up to the petals. Delete your practice painting using triangle. Then enter paint mode in the Modes menu. Choose a colour and a finish from the paint menu. Then choose a fleck to paint with. Use the up and down directional buttons to adjust the size of the fleck. Now paint a simple stroke. Remember, the harder you press, the more opaque the flecks will be. If you want to take another shot at it, just undo with the left directional button and try again. When you're happy with your leaf, go to the next step. Next, let's paint a stalk. In the context menu, you'll see a button with a plus sign icon. Select this button to start a new painting. For the stalk, we'll use the DrawFlex tool. Open the Paint menu with Square if it's closed, then select the Tools menu. The DrawFlex tool icon is a pencil. Select it with X. DrawFlex acts more like a pen than a paintbrush. The harder you press R2, the larger the stroke gets. So if you press gently, the stroke will be quite small. When you scale the DrawFlex tool, the fleck will get much bigger. That's because it's showing you the maximum size of the fleck. When you stop scaling, it reverts back to the smallest size the fleck can be. Try drawing a flower stalk with it. Have a few goes to practice. Adjust the pressure on R2 as you paint the stroke, so that the stalk tapers at the end. Don't worry about lining it up with the leaf though. We'll do that later. When you're happy with your stalk, continue to the next step. Now the exciting bit, the flower. In the context menu, select the Start New Painting button. By starting a new painting, the flower will be a separate object to the stalk. We're going to paint the petals with the Stamp Flex tool, plus a special ingredient. You can find Stamp Flex in the Paint Mode Tools menu. Select it with X, then choose a fleck, colour and finish for your flower's petals. Now for that special ingredient, the Kaleidoscope Guide. You can find Kaleidoscope in the Guides menu, which is in the top row of the Paint menu. The kaleidoscope icon looks like a snowflake. Select it with X to turn it on. Leave the settings as they are for now. You can experiment with them later. On your imp. Stamp the clump in your scene. That will set the center of the kaleidoscope. There will now be one fleck on your imp and 4 others floating around the center point. Whatever you do with the fleck on your imp will be mirrored by the other 4. You might need to adjust your position to get a good view. You could also try rotating the fleck on your imp. To do that, hold L2 and use the sticks, or stroke the touchpad. You can use the up and down directional buttons to scale the flecks. Whatever you do, make a flower you like the look of. If you mess up, you can just undo it with the left directional button and try again. Add as many petals as you like. Try using different colours and sizes. You could also try using the other painting techniques you've learned. If you want to delete parts of the bloom, just unequip the Stamp Flex tool by pressing circle. Then use triangle to delete any parts you don't like. If you delete the first flex you stamped, the kaleidoscope guide will still be centered on their position. With the Move tool equipped, you can also move or even clone parts of the painting. Flex created with the kaleidoscope guide will always behave like a kaleidoscope, even when the guide is turned off. Go ahead and experiment. Then, when you're happy, proceed to the next step. Now we've finished painting, unequip the Stamp Flex tool with circle. And if it's still on, turn off kaleidoscope in the guides menu too. Scope out of the painting by holding L1 and pressing circle. Now you can assemble the parts of the flower using the Move tool. Beautiful. Let's group the flower so it's a single object. Select all of the flower parts with X. And now select the Group button in the context menu. There! We've made the flower a single group that we can move, scale, rotate, and clone. I spy some charming plant pots. How about we put them...